share my screen with you guys because I did a little presentation. So I'll just do that quickly now. And then also tell me if you guys can see it. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So yeah, as Jack said, we've been doing these little like webinars, and I really enjoy doing them. Normally we did some of them face to face with other topics too in the clinic, and me and Jack had actually planned some other face to face seminars before all of the COVID stuff broke out. So I'm glad we still get to do it online. And today, obviously, we're going to be speaking about immunity. And while you think that, we're just doing this because of COVID-19, normally the clinic is always pushing stuff around immunity during this time of year anyway, because, people are more susceptible to colds and flus. And you'd be surprised how many people come into the clinic just complaining of really bad, like upper respiratory tract infections and lower respiratory tract infections that they constantly struggle with every single year. It's like every time winter comes around, you just get some people that are constantly getting sick, and then it just really knocks them down and takes them a long time to also resolve. So some of the things that we're going to be talking about today, I hope the principles that you learn, the principles are going to be good for your general well-being and also obviously for your immune system, not only to help you during this time where there's a pandemic going on, but just, in the future when cold and flus just happen during winter, it'll give you some tips and ideas to make sure that when winter does come around, you are protecting your immune system. So obviously, Jack said I'm a naturopath, also a PT as well, but not currently working as a PT. And just if you didn't know what a naturopath does, just to sum it up very briefly, basically we use diet and lifestyle interventions as well as herbal and nutritional supplementation to treat the underlying causes of people's most concerning health issues. So not that there's anything wrong with the medical model, but I'm sure, as you guys are aware, that it is a very symptom-based approach. So we tend to treat certain illnesses and symptoms with medications to try and suppress the symptoms, but there's a lack of regard for what's the underlying causes of that and underlying drivers. And that's really the main principle of naturopathy, is that we're trying to address the underlying causes of people's health issues, because once you do that, then you don't have to go chasing after individual symptoms, and symptoms also just start to naturally resolve. And then also you get long-term health as a result of that. You're not just suppressing the symptoms while the underlying causes are still manifesting. So that when you stop taking the medications, then all of a sudden those symptoms come back and with a vengeance. So just to start talking about the immune system. So I'm sure you guys all know that the primary function of the immune system is obviously to protect us from microbes. So, bacteria, fungi, parasites, all these little microscopic things that, as we've seen, can cause a huge amount of issues. And it's really important. Oh, we've got another one logging in. Hi, Sammy. Oh, we've just started.
Hi, sorry, I had technical difficulties.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, so our immune system protects us from microbes, and it's really important because, infections and chronic infections can cause long-lasting damage in the body. And this can lead to other types of diseases or increase your risk of developing certain other health conditions after infections. So obviously you could argue that the immune system is probably one of the most important systems in the body. And it is really, really complex, and it's crazy when you look at research papers about immunity, like the signaling pathways and some of the abbreviations. It's just like really complex. And you got to have a lot of respect for immunologists and people that also like specialize in research around the immune system, because it is so complex. And I remember when I was studying naturopathy, and we were doing our anatomy and physiology, and we got to the immune system, like everyone was stumped that week. It was like probably the hardest week because it is so complicated. But sometimes, with a lot of things in life, I think sometimes when you take a step back and you look at it as a whole, from a clinical perspective, even though it is a really complex system, what we know from research is that just doing good diet and lifestyle habits consistently really have a profound impact on the functioning of our immune system. And not only that, like when you also practice good diet and lifestyle habits, you're going to boost your immunity. But if you did happen to get an infection, then it won't affect you as much. To take like just the common cold or flu, for example, like if your diet and lifestyle is good and your immune system is good and you did happen to be affected by that, then the symptoms won't be as severe and your ability to recover and the speed of your recovery would be a lot quicker compared to someone else that might have a poor diet and lifestyle. And gets hit with some kind of infection. It may take them a lot longer, and sometimes people come into clinic and just when they get sick it just knocks them off their feet and they have to take days off work, whereas other people who have good immune systems, they could get an infection and kind of just get a bit of a sniffly nose and still go to work and be good within 1 or 2 days. So like I was saying, even though the immune system is extremely complex, we know that good diet and lifestyle habits can play a profound role in helping our immune system and the strength of our immune system. So also, not only does our immune system help with infection, it also plays a few other roles in the body which are important and it's worthwhile talking about. So I'm sure you guys all know when you like sprain your ankle or, you cut yourself, or even when you are suffering from some kind of chronic health issue, the immune system plays a really important role in that recovery process. So if you've got a good diet and lifestyle and therefore a good immune system, it's going to really help your body's ability to recover and heal itself from any type of injury or illness that you may have. Also, I don't know if you guys know, but autoimmune conditions are crazy. It's on the rise in our society. Like every year, the numbers keep increasing with the amount of people that are being diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. And autoimmunity is basically when the immune system attacks the body's own tissue, and it's an imbalance of the immune system. So having a good diet and lifestyle can really help to protect us from developing autoimmune conditions. So even though those conditions are, have a large genetic predisposition, we know that our diet and lifestyle interacts with our genes very closely. So if you may have a genetic predisposition towards an autoimmune condition like celiac disease, for example, if you've got a good diet and lifestyle that is like anti-inflammatory, it can kind of help to silence those genes. Whereas if you had a poor diet and lifestyle, it increased the risk of those genes manifesting in the body. And then lastly, talking about good diet and lifestyle, improving your immune system. Your immune system plays actually a really important role in, it has a role in the development of chronic diseases. So a lot of research is starting to show that the main driving factors behind chronic disease is chronic inflammation. And that chronic inflammation damages tissues and causes changes in tissues that like predispose us towards disease. And I'm putting that very simply, but so chronic inflammation, or every chronic health issue that you see, there's some kind of inflammation at the core of that. And what we do with our diet and lifestyle has a really important role in regulating the inflammatory status of our body. So good diet and lifestyle habits basically help to decrease inflammation in the body, which therefore decreases the risk of developing certain chronic health issues. Whereas poor diet and lifestyle habits, on the other hand, that kind of increases inflammation in the body, and that increases the risk of obviously developing chronic diseases. And like I was saying before, that increases the risk of genetic predispositions towards certain health issues actually manifesting in the body. So today we're going to talk about, the main diet and lifestyle factors that contribute to the health of our immune system. So I tend to think of the 4 pillars of health being your diet, sleep, exercise, and like stress management, your mindset, and your emotional well-being. We'll touch on a little bit with smoking and alcohol. Obviously, those are not like pillars of health, but they are quite common in our society, so I will address those. But most of the work that I do in clinic with people is around those 4 pillars of health. And it's just helping people make practical and sustainable changes around those habits so that they can maintain them long after our face-to-face consult. So I really see myself not as like a healer or treating anyone in clinic. I kind of see myself as a coach where I'm helping to empower people and facilitate behavior change around their diet and lifestyle habits. And these things are obviously a little bit more difficult than just taking a simple supplement or a medication. So they can take a bit of time, but I really try to make sure that when I do work on these things with people, it's in a really practical and sustainable way. Because like I was saying, ultimately, I want people to be able to take control of their health so they don't have to rely on health practitioners and they can just be healthy themselves. Cool. So the first thing we're going to talk about in regards to our diet, so we'll start off with diet as the first pillar. And the first thing I always talk about with people in clinic is protein intake. Now, protein is absolutely essential for the functioning of many parts of your body, but especially your immune system, because when you actually look at all the cells in our immune system, they are all made of various types of protein. And protein, like insufficiencies, so people not eating enough protein, research has shown that they do have compromised immune systems. So protein is the foundational nutrient that I always talk about when it comes to your immune system, but also for general health. It just plays a lot of really important roles in the body. You know, and I also talk to people about it. It makes you feel a lot more satiated. So proteins are most satiating nutrients. So when you're getting enough protein throughout your day, you feel more satiated, and that decreases, you know, your likelihood of maybe craving other sugary and palatable foods that are maybe a bit unhealthy. It stabilizes your blood sugar levels, so that keeps your energy levels consistent throughout the day. And that's huge for people. When I normally get people to eat a bit more protein in their diet, they see a significant shift in their energy levels. And when we talk about protein serving sizes, we talk about it being the size and thickness of an open palm. So obviously all of our palm sizes are different. And my palm would be different to someone else's. So it's based on your palm. And so for females, they should be having 1 palm of protein per meal, and males should be having 2 palm sizes. And this is obviously this template that I'm talking about, these serving sizes based on 3 meals. And we'll talk about snacking and stuff later on. But what I'm just so you know what I'm talking about is in relation to 3 meals per day. And good source of protein are your animal-based products. So things like eggs, Greek yogurt, fish, obviously all your types of meat. All those animal-based products are the best source of protein. They've got the highest amount of protein, and the protein is very bioavailable, which means it's readily absorbed into the body. Now, we categorize foods, whether they're a protein, fat, carbohydrate, or vegetable, based on the predominating nutrient. So I know some of you might have heard, like, you know, nuts, for example, is a good source of protein. Nuts is actually a fat source. Yes, it does have protein in it, but most of what is like the composition of nuts is mostly fats. And it's the same with, say, meat. So meat does also have fats in it, but it's got mostly protein, which is why we put it in the protein category. So all of your best forms of protein are the animal-based products. So every meal when you sit down, you should be thinking the first thing, like, you know, about putting on your plate is, where's my protein source? Where is my animal-based protein source? And then you start thinking about your serving sizes. And obviously when you're having these protein sources, you've got to be thinking about making sure that you're getting, you know, good quality meat and good quality like eggs, and you're flavoring these things yourself. So instead of getting like pre-packaged meats with like bastings on them already, and like avoiding processed meats like bacon and salami and those types of things. So we're talking about like good quality whole food protein sources. And this is the foundation of your diet. And especially throughout the winter, if you want to keep your immune system healthy, having adequate protein intake throughout the day is really important. And sometimes people do struggle with the 3 serves of protein at every meal. So normally I say at least 2 out of 3 meals should have some kind of animal-based protein source, sticking to those serving sizes. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah. All right. So the next thing is vegetables. So talking about the foundation of your diet, when you sit down to a meal, most of your plate should be made up of protein and vegetables. That is the foundation for the rest of your life. Protein and vegetables is the foundation. Again, vegetables are really high in fiber. They make you feel fuller for longer. They're very satiating, and they've got heaps of amazing nutrients in them. So not only do plants have, vitamins and minerals in them that are going to help with your immune system, they also contain phytonutrients as well, which is specific to plants. And these phytonutrients also help to boost our immune system. They're antioxidants. And on top of that too, obviously we know that vegetables are very high in fiber as well. And fiber helps to feed the good bacteria within our digestive system. And I'm sure you guys have heard about, the composition of our gut bacteria being really important for our health. And it's very important for our immune system because 80% of our immune system is actually located within our digestive system. So the gut bugs in our digestive tract play a really important role in regulating the health of our immunity. So if we're feeding those good gut bugs with, good quality vegetables and as well as good source of protein, then the health of our bacteria is going to be a lot better. And that's going to obviously support our immune system. And then when we talk about vegetables, for a female, the serving size should be at least a fist, and for males, 2 fists. But I normally say to people, the more the merrier with vegetables. Really load up on your plate with vegetables because it's very hard to overeat on them, and you kind of can't get enough of them. Also with the types of vegetables you want to be eating. So generally, I say to people that at every meal, you want to be getting at least 2 different types of vegetables. Try to get, a lot of variety and colors, but 2 types of vegetables at every meal would be more than okay. So for example, if you were really pressed for time and rushing out the door, maybe in the morning, and you boiled some eggs as your protein, and you took some cut up cucumber and tomato, that would still be, a good protein and vegetable meal. I know it's very simple, but it's still better it's better for you to have that than maybe not eat anything at all, or maybe go get like a croissant from the bakery because you're rushed. There's still some very simple options you can make from home that are going to support your health and your immune system as well. So the next thing we talk about is carbohydrates. So as I said to you guys, especially for your immune system, protein and vegetables is the foundation of everyone's diet. And that's just good for general health. When we talk about carbs, I think carbs get a bit of a bad rap in the media, but it's normally because everyone's talking about processed carbohydrates. We've got to talk about the quality of carbs. So good quality whole food carbs are very good for us. And now the necessity to have them on a day-to-day basis is not high because, most people aren't athletes and we're pretty sedentary on a day-to-day basis. So you could get away with just having some fruits and vegetables and probably get enough carbohydrates to support your health. But what I normally say to people is that if you do enjoy carbohydrates and you want to have that with your protein and vegetables, just make sure it's a cupped hand. So a cupped hand for females and 2 cupped hand for males. And when we talk about good source of carbohydrates, these are things like obviously fruit and starchy vegetables as well. So things like potato, sweet potato, pumpkin, butternut. We really want to be getting a lot of our carbohydrates from those more vegetable-based starches. And the reason for that is because they're a lot more nutrient dense. So if you were to compare, say, the nutrient density of rice compared to sweet potato comes out on top. And it's got lots of vitamins and minerals, and also it's extremely high in fibers and prebiotics that are going to feed your good bacteria in your gut. Now, it's not to say that things like rice are bad for you. I just normally say to people, throughout your day, if you're going to have some carbs, try and prioritize having, at least a cupped hand of fruit or a cupped hand of starchy vegetables. And then if you do want some grain-based carbs, that's also okay. But, just making sure that you're keeping to it a cupped hand. And I would normally say to people, keep the grain-based carbohydrates more of a rarity, like a once or twice per week, and keeping the fruits and starchy vegetables, as a constant thing. But other good sources of grain-based carbs are things like obviously your whole grains, so quinoa, buckwheat, rice. Even you could put beans and legumes and lentils in that category. All of those more grainy based types of carbohydrates are still good for you, but I would normally say to people prioritize getting those starchy vegetables. All right, so the last macronutrient that we talk about is fats. So fats you don't necessarily have to add into your meals and your diet, because naturally when you are using cooking oils, you're going to get good fats from that. Also, like your protein sources are very high in certain fats that are going to benefit your health. But if you do feel like adding a fat source to your meal, I normally just talk about using your thumbs as a serving size for people. So for females, it's 1 thumb. For males, it's 2 thumbs. That can get a bit difficult and hard, but it's a good guide to kind of figure out what your serving size should be. And obviously, good fats are things like our oils, so olive oil and coconut oil, butter, flaxseed oil, macadamia oil, avocado oil, all those healthy oils. And just talking about oils too, when you guys cook, you should be cooking with more saturated types of oils, so things like olive oil, butter, even ghee is okay, coconut oil. And then when you're dressing your salads and things like that, olive oil can be one of them, but then that's where flaxseed oil comes in, and macadamia oil and avocado oil. But I wouldn't be cooking with things like macadamia oil, because they can go rancid at high temperatures. So you want to try stick to more saturated types of fats when you're using your cooking oils. And then talking about oils and fats as well, that's where we want to be also making sure that we're removing things like vegetable oils, like canola oil and safflower oil. We don't want to be cooking with those things because they go rancid at high temperatures. And what's interesting is that most like cafes and restaurants use vegetable oils for their cooking, which I'm sure you guys have seen when you go out the back behind certain restaurants. You see those big drums of vegetable oils. And that's not exactly ideal for our health, which is why home cooking all your meals is better. So good sources of fats also include avocados, nuts and seeds, any of the nut butters, the pure nut butter, so like peanut butter or almond butter, just making sure when you do buy them, you're getting the natural forms that are just 100% nuts and doesn't have any added salts or flavorings or vegetable oils or anything like that. And also all the coconut derivatives, so coconut cream, coconut milk, coconut flour, coconut yogurt, all of those types of things are really good sources of fat. And yeah, your fats do play an important part in your immune system. But like I said, if you didn't add them to your diet, it's not like you'd get any deficiencies in fats, because your cooking oils and also your protein sources have really good fats in them that are going to be enough for your body. But if you do want to add them into your diet, then the thumb-based serving sizes is the way to go. And just to make you guys aware, like I said to you, how we're talking about all of these serving sizes for 3 meals per day, I'm also talking about these serving sizes also for home-cooked meals. So I really try to stress the importance to my patients about cooking all their meals at home, or majority of them. So like Monday to Friday, like all of your meals should be home-cooked. And a lot of research actually shows that people who cook their meals tend to be healthier than those who don't. So they have, lower BMIs and higher levels of vitamin C in their blood, lower risk of chronic disease. And the reason for this is because of, portion control and ingredient control, essentially. And I've just seen this clinically too, like some people when they come in with digestive issues, for example, even though they're trying to make healthy choices when they're eating out, there's just a big difference between home cooking your meals and eating out. So when people come with those digestive issues, even though they might have been having relatively healthy meals eating out, as soon as they change to eating at home, their digestive symptoms improve. And this might be because some of the flavorings and cooking oils that they use in restaurant foods might have been exacerbating their digestive tracts. So also just talking about flavoring our food. So ideally you want to be flavoring your foods with things like herbs and spices, lemon juices, even soy sauce is okay, healthy oils. Ideally, we just want to be removing things like tomato sauce, barbecue sauce, any of those processed sauces. So when you are flavoring your foods, you should just be thinking of like making stuff from scratch and just using herbs and spices. And this is also an extra way to boost your immune system. Things like turmeric, ginger, peppermint, cumin. There's heaps of amazing health benefits with these herbs and spices, and particularly for your immune system as well. And there's a lot of traditional cultures that use a lot of herbs and spices in their cooking. And some studies correlate that with like a decreased risk of certain diseases, and also, improvements in their immune system as well. So just to make that point that, when we do flavor our foods, they should be with whole food, herbs and spices instead of like processed sources. All right, so fluid intake. So I'm sure you guys are well aware of the importance of staying hydrated and drinking enough water. Majority of the time when you're thirsty, you should just be drinking water. Obviously, things like teas are okay. And, if you were to make like a smoothie or a fresh fruit and vegetable juice, but, you should be, majority of the things that you are, drinking should be water intake. And water is really important for our body for a number of reasons. But if we're relating that back to our immune system, having adequate water intake that keeps us hydrated, it basically keeps the mucous membranes moist, and that helps to stop bacteria or any microbes from stagnating on them. So for example, your upper respiratory tract, which is a mucous membrane, if you're hydrated, then that decreases the likelihood of any microbes being able to stick to your upper respiratory tract. Whereas if you were dehydrated and those weren't as moist, then your body couldn't flush them out as easily. And that goes also for all of your other mucous membranes as well, such as the urinary tract and the reproductive tract as well. And also for your skin too, being hydrated. I'm sure some of you have noticed too, when you're dehydrated, you can get a bit of dry skin. So staying hydrated keeps your skin healthy and moist, and that also protects you from certain skin issues or skin infections or anything like that. Also, just to note, other things that are okay as fluids too, like the milk. So milk's okay, if you tolerate it, and the milk alternatives as well, such as oat milk and rice milk, almond milk, all those types of things. Just making sure that when you do consume those things, that they're all unsweetened with no added sugar. So you're getting the varieties that don't have added sugar in there. All right, so snacking. So we've spoken now about how you should be approaching every main meal with your macronutrients, all those hand-based serving sizes with protein, vegetables, carbs, and fats. And then in between meals, you can have snacks. Now, if you are eating a whole food diet based on the template that I just spoke to you about, that kind of makes you feel full for longer. So therefore, normally in clinic, people, once we change their diet, they don't end up having as many snacks. But if you did want to have a snack, obviously just make sure that they're whole food things like fruit and making your own fresh fruit and vegetable juices, nuts and seeds, cut up vegetables, maybe having some vegetable sticks with avocado, and even making things like little smoothie bowls. So getting some coconut yogurt or Greek yogurt, mixing that with some nuts and seeds and some berries, and putting some like honey and cinnamon on there. And when it comes to snacking, I normally say to people that I really believe when they come to see me that they're investing in their health and they want to make an effort. So, because that's what where normally people fall down is in the snacking department, like chips and chocolate and stuff like that. And when it comes to healthy snacking, it's just about being prepared. So if you're prepared and you've got a good healthy snack on hand, then if you are consciously trying to change your diet, when you do feel hungry, then you'll reach for that healthy snack. The issue is that when you're not prepared and maybe you're like, maybe it's stressed out too and you're driving home from work or something and you stop at the servo, you get to pay and then you see that chocolate bar sitting in front of you and you grab that. And I really truly believe that if you had some healthy snacks within your car, you wouldn't take that chocolate bar because you've got something on hand. So healthy snacking is all about just being prepared and having things on hand and available. And on top of that, also just making sure that your house is a safe haven for healthy eating. So, clearing the house of any processed food and making sure that you've only really just got healthy snacks and ingredients for meals. If you really do crave some kind of processed food like chips and chocolate, then you can get in your car and go out and get it. But sometimes that's a deterrent for you to do that. So, you're less likely to do that if it's not in the house, because I'm sure you guys have all experienced this. I know I have. Chips and chocolate that sit in the cupboard, they hardly last. Like you see it every single day. It probably lasts about, 2 or 3 days before you start munching on it. Like I don't think any of those things have ever gone off in a household. Whereas, everyone's seen the fruit bowl go off sometimes. The apples get a bit weird or something like that. So yeah, just making sure that your house is a safe haven for healthy eating. And then, yeah, if you ever do feel like you want something like a treat, then you could always go out and get it. So talking about treats, I often talk to my patients about this idea of the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule is basically 80% of the time you should be having healthy whole foods at every meal. Sorry. Based on the template that we just spoke about. So good main meals, good snacks, and 20% of the time that leaves room for like indulgences. Now, in the context of a healthy diet, these indulgences are perfectly okay. Like I know that the media demonizes like sugar and all that type of stuff. They're not great for you, those foods, but they're only not good for you in, in amounts that are like, basically they're not good for you when you're having too much of them. So if the foundation of your diet is actually really good, then a little bit of these processed foods here and there are not bad for you. And I would even argue sometimes that they can be good for you, because it depends on the context and when you're consuming them. Like if you're drinking alcohol and having a pizza out with some friends, because we know social connection is important for health and things like that, then I'd argue that that's pretty healthy. It's very different to you eating a pizza and having some alcohol alone, at night when you've gone home from work and you're really stressed. Like the context is very different. So basically 80% of the time, which I normally say Monday to Friday for people, you should be having home cooked whole food meals. And then maybe on the weekends, 20% of the time you could have a bit of a splurge. And this 20% equates to 2 meals eaten out, or 2 foods or 2 drinks that don't adhere to the guidelines that we were speaking about. So, one standard drink of alcohol is considered like 1 indulgence. 1 meal eaten out is 1 indulgence. 300 mils of a sugary drink is 1 indulgence. And, any like a cupped hand of processed food like baked goods or desserts or confectionery, anything like that is considered 1 indulgence as well. So for example, if you look on your week, if you went out for dinner and you had a meal eaten out, and when you do eat out, I'd still urge you guys to try and pick healthy meals, like, with good protein and vegetables. And then you maybe had, some Coke with that or some alcohol. Those would be your 2 indulgences done for the week. And so I normally tell people to try and save your indulgences for social occasions instead of, and like I said, because the context in which you consume these things are very important. And we know that social connection is important for our health, and food is often a vehicle for that. So just to finish off our diet, this is a smoothie that I had this morning. And this is just to show you a really simple way of how you could get a really balanced meal that adheres to that template that we just spoke about with all the macronutrients into a blended form, into a smoothie. So I didn't talk about protein powder, but if you're going to go for a protein powder, which is a very good source of protein, and like it's an easy way to get a good source of protein without having to consume like, meat or eggs or anything like that. So this works at breakfast. I would normally tell people to go for whey. If you do struggle with dairy, whey is normally okay because it doesn't contain lactose and it doesn't contain casein, which is what people normally struggle with when it comes to dairy. But other types of animal-based protein powders are okay as well. You can get beef proteins, you can get egg proteins as well. And then probably the next protein powder down from whey in terms of quality, I would say is soy protein. But ideally you want to get whey because it's got some amazing benefits for your immune system, like some really amazing benefits actually. And it's a very bioavailable form of protein, so it's very well absorbed. Also, on top of that, with your vegetable intake, you can put spinach in there. So you've got your protein with the protein powder, you've got your vegetables with your spinach, and that would be your 5th serves. Then in terms of your carbohydrates, you'd put in some frozen fruit, might be banana, berries, that would be your cupped hand. Then with your fat source, you could put in some pure peanut butter or nut butter, maybe some coconut oil if you wanted to. Then your cinnamon could be there as your flavoring, as your herb and spice. And then you could chuck in some water or milk or one of the milk alternatives as your fluid, whatever tickles your fancy. All right, so diet was probably the most information heavy part, but just to summarize that, home cooked meals, Monday to Friday, protein and vegetables with healthy oils should be the foundation of your diet. You do that, you're going to feel a lot better, you're going to be healthier, and you're going to look after your immune system. So now we'll just touch on exercise. With all the gyms being closed and stuff like that, I know that exercise is a bit difficult, but basically what I just say to people with exercise, not to get too specific about it, is, but you should just be doing something for at least 30 minutes, 4 times per week, and you're getting your heart rate elevated where, you are breathing heavily. And you could maybe talk to someone next to you, but it would be a bit difficult. And it doesn't necessarily have to be some kind of formal, exercise routine that you do maybe online, like a YouTube workout or something. It could be in the form of playing a certain sport or, cycling or something like that. But I just normally say to people who don't have exercise as a part of their formal or their weekly routine, I just try to get them to just get moving on a day-to-day basis and doing something for at least 30 minutes that raises their heart rate. And then on the days that they aren't exercising, just going for, a 30-minute to an hour walk would be great. And exercise is obviously very important for our immune system. But then on top of that too, when we exercise, we also feel better. So we tend to eat healthier as well. And then we also sleep better, which we'll talk about, is really important for your immune system. And then it also helps with our stress levels as well. And as I will also talk about, your stress levels play a really important role with your immune system. So these pillars of health, when you start to work on one, they have an effect on all the others too, which is why you should be working on all of them together, because they all have this interrelationship. So just with exercise, just really just try and get out and do something, at least 4 times per week, if not every day. And then on top of that too, I know during these times we're a bit locked down and stuff, just being conscious of the amount of sitting that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So trying not to be overly sedentary, and trying to get, movement into your day. So standing up and working where possible, maybe sitting on a football at your desk instead of a chair. So you activate trunk muscles. Maybe in between sitting periods, you do some body weight sit-ups or push-ups or squats. When you go shopping, maybe parking further away from destinations, just things like that to get, exercise and movement into your daily life. All right, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is sleep. Sleep is extremely important for your overall well-being and especially your immune system. And it's quite interesting, research shows that 75% of Australians don't get enough sleep, or if they, do get enough, the quality of their sleep is quite poor. And decreased amounts of sleep is correlated with literally every chronic disease under the sun. It's quite amazing. And that's because every day we face physical and mental stresses. And when we go to sleep, it's a time where our body gets to repair and rejuvenate itself. And if you're not getting enough sleep or good quality sleep, then this repair and rejuvenation process doesn't happen effectively, which basically leads to chronic inflammation in your body. So your body doesn't repair itself. And this over time can increase your risk of various chronic diseases. But I'm sure you guys have all experienced when you just don't get enough sleep, after 1 or 2 nights, you start to wake up with a bit of a sore throat, your nose is a bit funny, and that just shows you how much of a profound effect that of sleep can have on your immune system. So keeping your immune system healthy, I would say sleep and diet are probably the 2 most important things. And the sad thing is that most people don't get enough sleep and good quality sleep. And the reason for this is 3 main factors, I would normally say. So it's got to do with the amount of stimulants we have throughout the day, so coffee and alcohol intake, our stress levels, and probably the biggest factor at the moment is technology exposure at night. So these 3 factors affect our circadian rhythm, which is our sleep and wake cycle, and they affect the hormones that govern that sleep and wake cycle. So cortisol is our get up and go hormone, which makes us feel awake. And cortisol is released in relation to the amount of light entering the eye. So the more light that enters the eye, that triggers the release of cortisol. So theoretically, as the sun starts to set and less light enters our eye, melatonin, our sleepy hormone, should start to rise and cortisol should drop off. But I say theoretically because this doesn't really happen. At night, a lot of us are exposing ourselves to technology, and that blue light registers in our brain, and your brain literally starts to think that it's daytime. So right up until you go to bed, if you're looking at technology, your brain and your body is literally thinking that it's daytime. So it's no wonder when you turn the lights off, people have trouble falling to sleep, or the maintenance of their sleep is poor, so they wake up throughout the night. And even if you fall asleep okay and stay asleep, if you're looking at technology the night before, I often talk to people and they say that they wake up feeling really groggy. And that's because the blue light exposure at night suppressed their melatonin levels throughout the night. So when they woke up, they weren't as refreshed, because melatonin is like the main hormone that's responsible for rejuvenating and repairing the body, because it's a potent antioxidant. So there's a lot of things that you can do around your sleep hygiene to improve your sleep. But the biggest thing is technology exposure. So normally I say to people like 45 minutes to an hour before your scheduled bedtime, which should be, before 12 a.m. So as early before 12 as possible, you should be turning off technology. Now, if you feel that that's a bit daunting, then leave your shower and your moisturizing and all that type of stuff that you normally do for that period, so you can kill a bit of time. So maybe that takes you half an hour, then you get into bed and you read a bit, and then you go to bed. But also just throughout the night, you should be trying to make sure that you're lighting your house with lamps instead of, LED lights. You're trying to do things that are relaxing. So not doing any housework or any work, that you might be doing from home or anything like that. Like nighttime should be a time where you're winding down and preparing your body to relax and go to sleep. You shouldn't be doing anything stimulating. But if there was anything that you took away from this, the biggest thing I would say is blue light exposure. So you'll be doing a lot for your sleep and the quality of your sleep if you're turning off any form of technology like TV, phones, iPads, all that type of stuff, at least 45 minutes to an hour before bed. And then also in that hour, you can do things to wind down, like meditate, or, turn on an app and do some breathing exercises. Obviously, you wouldn't be looking at the phone if you turn on that app. You could have like a relaxing bath. There's lots of things you can do to try and prepare your body to go to sleep and to wind down. And that wind down routine is also really important for just decreasing stress levels after like a long day. So I normally talk to people about the importance of your sleep hygiene because it is a really good form of stress reduction as well. All right, so the last pillar of health that we're going to talk about is like stress reduction, our mindset, and emotional well-being. So talking about your emotional well-being and your mindset, that's stuff's a little bit out of my realm as a practitioner. It's more for your counselors and stuff like that. And that's normally if people have got stuff going on with their emotional well-being and mindset, that, I normally refer them off to maybe a counselor or a psychologist or something like that. Because a lot of that stuff has to do with, our relationships and our upbringing and things like that, which are all very important for our overall health, because that can contribute to stress levels in the body. And stress really suppresses the immune system. So looking after your mental and emotional health is really important for your overall well-being, but especially your immune system. But then aside from that, there's lots of things that we can do on a daily basis to just help with our stress levels and reduce our stress levels. So normally, I think when people think about stress reduction, they think of mindfulness and yoga and meditation, which are all really great things. But for me, and a lot of other people as well, those things tend to maybe exacerbate certain stresses, because when I sit down with my thoughts and stuff, I really don't enjoy that. So the way I see stress reduction is through movement. And normally I try to say to people when it comes to stress reduction is just try and find yourself in what I call a flow state, which has some really important cognitive and, emotional benefits. And to be able to be in a flow state, you've got to satisfy these 5 criteria. So when you think of any stress reduction behavior, they should satisfy the following 5 criteria. So it should be something you enjoy. When you do it, you should lose track of time, so time becomes non-existent, whether time goes really fast or slows down. A lot of anxiety and stuff like that comes from worrying about the past and the future. So doing something that really brings you into the present is extremely helpful. And just talking about that, it also should be a behavior that does bring you into that present moment. It increases your connection to your mind or your body or nature or the people around you. And it also should be something that breaks up the daily routine of life. So for me, surfing satisfies that 5 criteria, but for someone else, it may be knitting, or it might be a type of exercise like going for a jog. Your stress reduction techniques might overlap with your forms of exercise. But on a weekly basis, you really should be prioritizing at least 3 or 4 times in your week some kind of behavior that satisfies those 5 criteria and considered, stress reduction and allows you to get into that flow state. Just touching on alcohol and smoking. Obviously, if you smoke, terrible for your immune system, and it's something that I would also normally refer people off to get some counseling around that to help them quit. Alcohol intake also can be really damaging for your immune system in excessive amounts, but alcohol does come under that 80-20 rule. So it's something that you can, have in modest amounts. And I would even argue that it is somewhat healthy for you in small amounts. It's just when it gets excessive, it can have a really profound impact on your immune system. And lastly, just talking about supplementation. During this time of COVID-19, everyone's gone a bit crazy with supplementation and asking, I heard in America, actually, like natural supplements were going off the shelves, but your immune system, like I said at the beginning of the slideshow, is really complex and it's got lots of different branches to it. So simply just taking like a vitamin C, for example, isn't just going to like boost your immune system in the way that you want. It might protect you from certain things, but other things it won't, because your immune system's got all these different branches and all these supplements work on these different branches. So when it comes to supplementation, I really think if you are wanting to use certain supplements to improve your immune health, you should seek out a qualified health professional, just because their knowledge of how supplementation works in the body is obviously going to probably be a lot better than the general person. And on top of that too, practitioners sell practitioner-only brands that you can't get over the counter. So over-the-counter supplement brands, the quality of them tend to be quite poor. The shelf stability of them is quite poor. So things that you might see on the label actually don't reflect what's in the capsule or the powder or anything like that. Because the body, which is the TGA, the government body that regulates supplements, they're more concerned about safety rather than efficacy. So all those supplements, in the dosages that you take them are relatively safe, but doesn't mean that they're going to be effective. But also I'd argue to taking those things over a long period of time, because the quality of them isn't great, they can harm your body. And they also, if you're maybe taking medications, they may interact with the medications in ways that could be harming your health. So it's always really good to go and see a health professional to look at your supplementation if that's something that you want to investigate. But supplements are always more effective in the backdrop of those diet and lifestyle habits that we just spoke about. So taking a supplement for your immune health isn't going to be the be all and end all if your sleep is poor and your diet's poor and all that type of stuff. Cool. All right. Any questions? Sorry, but also I took a little bit longer again than I should have. But yeah, any questions?
I don't know how this Zoom thing works. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Cool. Thank you. I don't have to raise my hand. No, I just overall, it's so helpful because I feel like I get overwhelmed and so anxious with so much different information. And I feel like you've just given such a, I don't know, like simple summary of how to know how to do everything, like in terms of managing stress, sleep, diet, all of these things. Like I'm someone that I really do struggle with my sleep, and I've had like health issues that impact that as well. I really struggle with my anxiety. Does all that sort of fall under that stress banner of like finding, because I also don't want to sit with my thoughts for too long. I'm trying the mindfulness thing. Sometimes I feel like sitting with my own stuff, I much prefer that movement, but I can still feel quite wired at the end of the day, just with a lot of thoughts and never getting that like refreshing sleep and things like that. And I am a person who probably takes too many supplements trying to make up for what I struggle with throughout the day. And like some of what you've addressed, like even with the protein, I struggle sometimes to have, with all my stress, anxiety, trying to manage life, I struggle to have those 3 meals a day. Like that's something I realize where, especially with the protein, like I don't get enough. And do you think that's something that would really, I'm already thinking that's something that would really help after everything that you've just spoken about, just changing your diet in that way. I do miss meals, and it's not.
Yeah, that can have like, that's normally where I start with people, because like I was saying, I do things in a habit-based way. So I try to start off, because all that information I just threw at you is normally done over like, could be 5 to 8 consults where we drip feed information to people. So it increases the likelihood of them being able to implement and then sustain it. So each week you get like a new habit. And protein is normally the first habit that I talk to people about, and being like, okay, just at every meal, I want you to just have a good source of quality protein. Don't worry about anything else. So just on that, all the stuff that I spoke about, don't try and implement it all together.
Yeah.
Work through maybe all the information that you took, and then you can start to kind of work your way up and start to implement it. But going back to what you're saying about the protein intake, sometimes, not that it's like going to solve all of your issues, but it's such an amazing thing that when people don't get enough of it and they start to eat consistently 3 meals per day and just at least get a protein source at that meal, you'll see probably a change in your energy levels, even your like mental health too, because like all the nutrients also within protein, like zinc and iron and all those things, are really important for the neurotransmitters that like regulate your mood. And
Yeah.
protein, like I was saying, stabilize your blood sugar levels, and low blood sugar levels can contribute to like exacerbating things like anxiety or, mental health stuff. So if you just start like there, that would probably be the first place I'd tell you to start. And you might see like a really profound shift in just your overall, well-being and just vitality, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I think it's trying to also change the mindset over what's good and bad. Like I ate plant-based for a long time, and then I
Mhm.
found after a while that really didn't work for me, and needing to get back into having more meat, fish, protein, and almost I think the anxiety of like skipping meals because I didn't want to eat the wrong thing. And I've sort of gotten into a habit that letting myself be hungry feels almost healthier. And so it's
Mm.
just trying to introduce those things more, like a little bit more protein, having 3 meals a day. It is hard though. Like, don't get me wrong, I love food and I do get hungry, but sometimes I go so long I'm not hungry anymore, and I think, oh, it's fine, I'll just wait till the next meal and eat a
Mm.
lot at dinner time.
Mm.
And it's, yeah, I don't think it's helpful. So
Yeah.
yeah, you've given
And
me a
like
lot.
it's better to eat like consistently throughout the day, and even if it's smaller meals, like, because what you'll end up doing is you'll have smaller meals throughout the day. Like, and you might have a big breakfast, a small snacky lunch, and then a big dinner. That's still okay, but as long as you're having whole foods and you're trying to make a point of getting some protein and vegetables at each of those meals, that is
Yeah.
the most. And the best thing also, like if you are struggling with that, um, and with all of this is to maybe also just see a health professional, because if you do try and go on the internet and stuff, like it's overwhelming and there's so much misinformation, and when you don't have that scientific background to like analyze studies, you can just go down wormholes, and people are really just trying to sell you something at the end of the day, whether it's a supplement or their cookbook or something like that. So if you're going to someone that is really just going to be invested in your well-being to improve your health, it's probably a better place to start, instead of like trying to, go on different websites and do it in that way.
Yeah.
That makes
It's
sense.
been years of accumulating the wrong information and I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this has
You,
been
you,
really good.
you really should invest in like maybe just trying to see if it's something that you want to, start looking at changing, because ultimately it's a short period in your life where maybe you work with a practitioner for like 6 months. But then
Yes.
in the context of your whole life, that's really small, and it's going to benefit you with all the things that you learn that you start to implement over that time.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say there are certain points where I just give up because, like, I used to work hospitality up until all of this. I'd work nights, and for me, that habit of like all working nights is not a time of relaxation. For me, it's a time of like you got to get up and go and
Mm.
get ready. And I'm even wanting to sort of change that in my life. So it's just, yeah, overall, I mean, I'll let someone else speak, but thank you. This has been really
That's
wonderful.
right.
So
Thanks
excited.
for your feedback. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thank you. Baz, do you have any questions, or are you all good?
Um, I just wanted to know your thoughts on like eating before like you go to bed. So like I see Emily and stuff at your clinic, so
Oh, okay.
she's really good in like planning and giving me like schedule. But just like the relationship of like say like I like dark chocolate. It
Mm.
increases like your histamine before bed, like the relationship. Do you have like any advice on like should you
Yeah.
eat it before like snacking? Like after dinner snack, because that's what I would generally do.
Yeah. So, I mean, also talking about like dark chocolate again, if you are
Mm.
particularly sensitive and stuff like that, does have a bit of caffeine in it. But I normally do try to say to people that you want to try be like eating no later than like around 8 p.m.
Yeah.
And if you're eating, again, like a good whole foods, you're probably less likely to feel like snacking in that evening period. And if you maybe do want a bit of dessert, you know, like some dark chocolate, then you have that like straight after dinner instead of having it, you know, 10 p.m. or something just before you go to bed. But yeah, I'd normally, in my opinion, just try to stop people from eating past like things like 8 p.m. after dinner. Just because even though your body should be in a relaxed state to digest, before you go to bed, you shouldn't be having like a full tummy or like food, like just digesting, because, you know, that's a disruptive process to you wanting to sleep, especially if you're having something like a dark chocolate that is going to have caffeine in it. And then on top of that, if Emily's got you on like a low histamine protocol of some sort, obviously that's not ideal for histamine levels. It's probably it's like in the same category as like things like fermented foods and things like that, which are probably, and I'd keep maybe your dark chocolate as part of your 80-20 rule, you know, something like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah,
No
I really enjoyed it. So
cool.
Thanks heaps for taking the time out.
And thank you for joining us. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, so thanks very much for joining us, and thanks, Alon, for giving us all the info. On our, if you're interested in a bit more of this sort of stuff, follow us on Facebook, and subscribe to our email, just because we'll be putting information out about different kind of webinars, etc. in the future. And I hope you really got some good information and a good start to your week.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is wonderful. I'm very happy.
Thank you. Glad.
It was really well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Sammy. See you, Baz. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. See
Bye.
ya.
Bye.
Bye.